Hi and welcome back. We've got most of our 3D printer together and we're almost ready to wire it and fire it up. But first we have to put the hot end together. This is the hot end kit. It comes from hotends.com. They're cheaper assembled hot ends that you can find on eBay. This one runs around $60 and you put it together. I don't recommend getting the cheaper units. The reason for that being that the knockoffs are not made to the high quality that this is, and this is what actually deposits the plastic onto the surface. So it would be like getting a cheap tip for your calligraphy pen and then trying to do good calligraphy with it. It's not going to turn out very good for you. So I do recommend splurging and getting the good hot end for your project. It comes with the resistor, the thermistor, and the Teflon tubing needed to put it together, and we'll go through that. But in addition, you need a 40mm fan. It comes with this little adapter here, which we'll put to good use, I'm sure. We need some ultra copper RTV sealant. This actually is our heatsink compound that we're going to use to make sure that the resistor connects well to the heatsink of the hot end. We're going to use some solder for this. We're using silver bearing solder because it melts at a higher temperature. That's not mandatory, it's just something I'm doing for this one. I'm also going to manually flux the ends to make sure I get a good connection. We're using 18 gauge stranded speaker wire for the hot end itself. This should be thick enough wire to carry the current that we need. But for the thermistor, we're going to use this cable here, which is a networking patch cable with a bad end. It's got this twisted pair-stranded cable in it that works real nice for low current applications. So actually for the fan and for the thermistor, we're going to use two different pairs of that. And around that, we found while we were getting our TV at the auto parts store, this 3/8 inch or 10mm wire housing. So that's going to go around the whole thing, and it's supposed to be flame retardant as well. Also, we've got some heat shrink tubing here, and we've got some normal Arduino style or breadboard style patch cables. We're using the female ends of these. We'll be hooking this to the networking cable where we hook our fan on, and also where we hook our thermistor. Okay, our first step is to go ahead and put our PTFE Teflon tubing over both ends of the resistor. It comes with the kit. We've got some large tubing that goes over the resistor wires and some smaller tubing up here that goes over the thermistor wires. You can see I've left some wire exposed at both ends. We're not trimming this resistor at all. We want as much distance between here where the heat is generated and over here where our solder is going to be. So we'll leave those nice and long and just trim the tubing to match that. And then the next step is going to be to take our actual hot end and fill it with RTV and install both of these pieces. Okay, for the next step here, I'm actually filling this hole here with RTV sealant. You can see I've got it full there. Then I'm going to go ahead and put this resistor through here. We'll poke it through, and it's a nice amount on both the resistor. All of that. So it's half glue, half heatsink compound, really, the way we're using it. But once you've got it in there, you want it pretty solidly connecting everything, and then I'm going to go ahead and remove all of this excess here and clean it up a bit. Now we've got the excess RTV cleaned off of the resistor, we can go ahead and do the same. We're going to put a little bit of RTV into that hole on the right hand side right there, and then install this little thermistor, and it just crams in there. And we'll clean off any excess from that as well. Now that both the resistor and thermistor are RTV'd into place, we're going to set this aside and let it dry. While our hot end there is drying and our soldering iron's warming up, stripping the Cat5 networking cable, you can see we're going to use one of these twisted pairs for the thermistor and another one for the fan there. Now that I've got the Cat5 cable stripped, I can go ahead and connect the fan wiring. We're going to take one of the Cat5 cables. I'm going to use blue and white for the fan, the idea being that the fan cools it off, and blue is a cool color. And instead of wiring it straight to the fan, since the fan came with this neat little adapter, I'm just going to cut one of the ends off of that and wire it to that, and that way I'll have a fan that actually removes from the system, which will be nice. So we're going to cut the large end off of this adapter and then solder this blue and white wire onto it, and using some heat shrink. With the fan wire soldered together and the hot end dry, I can now take the orange twisted pair cable and solder it to the thermistor wires there. Now that our thermistor wire is soldered together, the last thing we have to do is actually take our speaker wire and solder it to the ends of the resistor there. I've actually dipped both the ends of the resistor in some flux, and I'll tin them up, and I'll do the same for the speaker wire. That ensures that we'll get a good connection. I'm also, as I said before, using the silver bearing solder because it melts at a higher temperature, so there's less likelihood of the hot end actually melting the solder. And then I'll use some heat shrink to lock that into place. You can see our completed hot end assembly here. Everything's soldered together. We've got all our cables going off to the back. This is eventually going to slide into that fan assembly right there, and all of the wires will be covered with this 10mm housing.